So a few weeks ago, one of my subscribers, I believe they're one of my subscribers, named Lorian Williams, asked me if I could make a video pretty much talking about how much money you would need to invest in an ETF to make $100 a month. So today we're going to be talking about how much money you would need to put in specific ETFs to make $100 a month. Let's begin. What's going on, guys? My name is Darren Jackson. I hope you are all having an amazing day so far. And just quickly, I just want to acknowledge that I know I didn't make a video last week. Honestly, I had a lot of little things going on within that week, and it was taken away from the time that I wanted to put towards recording that video. I ended up recording a video, but I could tell that it wasn't giving off a good vibe. And considering I only make a video a week, I want to make sure I give you guys my all 100% every time. You guys are taking the time to watch me talk about things, knowing I'm not a professional, so I really appreciate it. I feel like I owe that to you guys. So I decided to skip that. If you're still with me, welcome back to this channel. And if you're new and you found my video somehow, then welcome to the channel. And hopefully you guys appreciate the guy that likes to point at the words in his thumbnail. So fun time. But today I wanted to go over a question that Lorian asked me that made me think about the ultimate goal that I've had. And I've talked about that before. I've brought up that my ultimate goal is to be able to have a stock portfolio that can provide me with passive income that I could ultimately live off of, that could contribute to my early retirement, or at least help me pay some bills. Just to be able to invest in stocks and do absolutely nothing and gain money would be a huge goal. And my original goal when I started investing with Robinhood over a year ago was to be able to have a portfolio that paid me $100 a year. And as of last month, I made that goal, and I'm pretty sure I'm still at that goal to this point. But this question reminded me that an even bigger goal that I would love to have is to not only make $100 a year, but to make $100 every single month. And that would be amazing. That's a phone bill, an electric bill, and then some. So that would be awesome. So he specifically brought up ETFs, which are some of my favorite types of stocks to invest in. So in this video breakdown, guys, we're gonna be going over 4 different ETFs, or pretty much summarize them all. Some I've vaguely talked about, some I haven't talked about at all, and one particular one that I talk about too often, but get over it. I'm gonna summarize it as quickly as I can. And ultimately, you'll be able to know based off today's market values, which will be a week prior to this video coming out. And I'm assuming that stocks aren't gonna dramatically jump between now and when I release this video. But anyway, you'll be able to understand how much money you would have to contribute to each stock to make $100 a month. I'll personally pick which one I think is my favorite based off the metrics and other things, and we'll go from there. So let's get started. All right, now before we get started, just keep in mind, guys, I am not a financial advisor, at least not at the moment, but currently I'm not. So just please remember that this video is for entertainment purposes only. And if you're not confident in the ETFs that I bring up, and before you invest in general, if you feel like it, make sure you speak with your financial advisor before you make any decisions whatsoever. So with that being said, we're gonna go over these 4 ETFs. Now, the first 2 are fairly similar, but based off title and stuff like that. The first one being ticker symbol SDIV, which is the Global X Super Dividend ETF. Now, this ETF tracks the top 100 global securities with the highest dividend yield, so it's spanning on the top 100 different securities from the entire world in comparison to the second one. And the super dividend aspect of it speaks for itself pretty much. Now, the current price of this stock is at about $11.50 roughly per share. And the dividend yield is at almost 12%. Now, I love my dividend payouts, but even for me, that's a little high. I'd be a little skeptical about it, but it's a pretty big number. I understand why a lot of people invest in it. But considering the price per share, you're looking at about 8 cents a month that you'll be making from investing in SDIV. Now, keeping all of that in mind, in order for you to make $100 a month from SDIV, you would need to purchase, as of today at least, 1,250 shares, which would ultimately cost you about $14,200. That's a bit of money, but just mind you guys, I'm gonna just spoil it for now. It's actually the cheapest from these 4 stocks. So just keep that in mind, and we'll move on to the next one, which is ticker symbol DIV, which is the Global X Super Dividend US ETF. So very similar to SDIV, except it's specific on the top 100 global securities within the United States. Now this ETF costs about $15.50-ish per share, and it pays out 10 cents a month from, again, its super dividend yield of about 11%. So just a little bit lower than SDIV, but still pretty significant. Now, in order to make $100 a month from this particular ETF of DIV, considering its dividend yield and the cost per share, you would need to invest in roughly 1,000 shares of this particular stock, which would cost you about $15,500, I believe. So again, a lot of money, but just a little bit higher than SDIV, which is our lowest. But moving on to the third stock, I warned you guys, one of these ETFs is an ETF that I talk about all the time. Oh well, SPHD, which is the Invesco S&P 500 high dividend, low volatility ETF. It's one of my favorite stocks. And the reason being is that it tracks the top 75 highest dividend paying stocks in the S&P 500. And then from that 75, it takes the top 50 lowest volatility, which can be a pro and a con depending on how you look at it, but I personally like it a lot. Now, this current stock has a little over a 5, maybe almost 6% dividend yield, so it is a drastic drop from the first two, hence it's not a super dividend ETF, but still fairly decent. And it currently sells at about $33 per share. Now, keeping that all in mind, if you wanted to make $100 a month from SPHD, it would require you to have at least 667 shares of SPHD, which would cost you $22,579. So that is $7,000 more than DIV and almost $8,000 more than SDIV. That's a big jump. It may not be worth it because it's a lot of money, but let's keep going to the last ETF, which is JNK. Shout out to Jacob Fisher. I know he loves this ETF. It is the SPDR Barclays Capital High Yield Bond ETF, and it primarily tracks high yield and high liquid US dollar denominated corporate bonds. And currently it costs about $103 per share, which is the most expensive of all four of these. So you can assume it's going to cost the most to make $100 a share. Now, considering that this ETF has a dividend pretty similar to SPHD at roughly 5.6%, that'll equate you to 49 cents a month per share. That's not so bad. But in order for you to make $100 a month from JNK, considering how much the price per share is and the dividend yield, you would need 204 shares of this ETF, which would cost you a little over $21,000, maybe almost $22,000 per share. So just as much as SPHD, actually a little bit less, but still a lot more than DIV and SDIV. So you're looking at least $15,000 to be able to invest in any of these stocks to make close to $100 a month. So with that being said, if you were forced to invest all of your money into one of these four ETFs to make $100 a month, then the obvious answer would be SDIV because it's the cheapest. You don't have to put as much money in and you get the same amount out. But that's not the one I would pick. And there's a few reasons why. So even though SDIV is the easiest one to accrue, there's a reason behind that. And one of the reasons is a phrase that I recently learned called value trap. What the value trap essentially is in the eyes of the investor, they see a stock like SDIV, they see the low balance on it, oh, this is cheap to buy, and they see the high dividend yield, and that's just money. They know that if they put a lot of funds into this ETF, they're gonna get a lot back. But they don't realize, and I've done this at the beginning of my investing career, I'm still kind of at the beginning, but at the very beginning, I've done this. I've been a victim of value trap. And I don't take into account that not only has the price per share dropped within the past 5 years, but there has to be a reason why. And even before this pandemic happened, the price per share of this stock has dropped tremendously, and there's some reason why. So what can end up happening is you could potentially invest in a company with a trend of decreasing its stock over a long period of time, and unless something miraculous happens within the ETF or the sectors that it covers, which within SDIV, I'm pretty sure it's finance. It's primarily, I think it's about 40% finance. Unless something drastic happens within those global securities in that sector that make up the majority of this ETF, you're probably going to have a stock that's going to decrease consistently, which means the potential of the dividend yield will go down, which is also attractive considering that the dividend yield and the stock price are inversely related. Typically, the higher the stock price is, the lower the dividend yield, and vice versa. The lower the stock price, the higher the dividend yield, but it's not worth it at the end of the day. So with that being said, that would be the last stock I would pick. And surprisingly enough, or maybe not if you guys know me, if I had no choice but to invest a lot of money into one stock or one ETF to make $100 a month, I would pick SPHD, the most expensive. Why? Because the return on investment. That's another phrase that is very important, especially if you're a long-term growth and dividend investor just like me. Yes, it's amazing to be able to have a stock portfolio filled with stocks and ETFs, bonds, et cetera, that provide you with dividends for doing absolutely nothing. So it'd be cool to make $100 a month on one particular stock in the long run. But also in the long run, I'm looking to put money into something and then years from now, take it out if I choose to, and it's grown into something more. Now, even through this pandemic, SPHD has a trend of growing at about 3 to 4% within the past 5 years. And pre-pandemic, you were looking at 32% growth. So if we just broke it down to 30% a year for the past 5 years, or if we just broke it down to 30% within the past 5 years, which is 6% per year on average, you're looking at $1,200 extra per year solely from just the growth of the stock, which you're looking at about $2 a year that each share of stocks grow. And if you own 667 shares of this stock, you're looking at almost $1,300 every single year in passive income, which is the equivalent, if the price were to stay at about $33 a share, 37 stocks. On top of that, you're getting your monthly dividend checks, and hopefully if you're like me, you're taking advantage of compound investing, or compound interest, and you're putting that money right back in. Consistent growth, huge growth from a combination of two major impacts being return on investments and dividend growth. So I'd be more than willing to put $22,000 into an ETF or a stock like that, knowing what it's going to do for me in the long term. So make sure you guys think about that before you create your portfolio. If you're a growth dividend investor or you put a lot of money into a particular stock, think about what you want in the long run. And I hope this video helps out. If you really feel like it did, or you just stuck around to listen to me, then make sure you watch some of these other videos. Hopefully it helps you in your investing journey as it has in mine. I appreciate you guys watching. I will be back next week. Do not worry. So until then, take care.